a geek's frontier.
These are the voyages of the Weird Warriors podcast.
Its continuing mission to explore the strange convention scene,
to seek out cultural iconography and final resting places,
to boldly go
where countless dorks have gone before.
Nailed it.
One of these days we'll get it right.
Hello and welcome to the Weird Warriors podcast. I'm Max.
I'm Rich.
And we are in perfect synchronicity here on the show, as always. And as always on the show, almost always, we focus on the Weird War Tales comic book series published by DC Comics from 1971 to 1983. However, as you may have gotten a hint of at the top there, we're doing a little something different this time. We're going on a road trip. Yes, that's right. The Road Warriors are back. And this time, we're taking a trip to the X-Files Preservation Collection. And Rich is here to tell you a little something about that specific establishment.
There'll be a lot of sixes on this one. Road Warrior 6. 6th month. 6th day. 2026. X-Files. So, background information first, as usual. The X-Files is an American science fiction drama television series created by Chris Carter, starring David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. The original series aired from September 10th, 1993 to May 19th, 2002 on Fox, spanning 9 seasons with 202 episodes. A 10th season of 6 episodes ran from January to February 2016. Following the ratings success of the revival, The X-Files returned for an 11th season of 10 episodes, which ran from January to March 2018. In addition to the television series, 2 feature films were released. The 1998 film, The X-Files, and the standalone film, The X-Files, I Want to Believe, released in 2008, 6 years after the original television run ended. The X-Files Preservation Collection is a privately owned collection and consists of thousands of props, costumes, set dressings, memorabilia, and behind-the-scenes production materials from the hit television series. Spanning the complete history of the franchise, the collection opened on April 30th, 2022. Creator Chris Carter was there to cut the ribbon, and he donated several pieces to the collection. They have 1-hour-long live virtual tours where a guide will walk around the museum with a webcam and you just tell them what you want to see and they'll answer your questions. $25, place the order ahead of time. www.xfilespreservationcollection.com. We're open 11 to 5 Thursday through Monday or by appointment. 4284 Route 50, Saratoga Springs, New York. I've been leading on Max pretty hard to do this as a Road Warriors episode for a while, practically since we wrapped the Star Trek episode. Scheduling was the usual holdup. By the greatest of coincidences, it lined up, as you already heard, on June 6th, the 82nd anniversary of the D-Day landings. So I wore my 75th anniversary shirt for when I was in Normandy, along with my WWP cap. Max came out to my house, said hi to my wife Jenny, pet the dogs, hung out for a bit, and then we went up to Saratoga in our separate cars, checked this place out because we were going to be going our own ways after this. GPS lied to Max, and he turned off the road about a quarter mile before he was supposed to. It took him a bit, but he figured it out eventually.
Only now, here on this very podcast, will I admit what I actually did wrong. I entered 4248 instead of 4284. So the GPS didn't betray me. I just entered the wrong address. I didn't admit that back in the moment because I was too annoyed. And I just knew I was handing Rich another Max technically got lost anecdote, which he really, really does not need.
Because I got plenty of those to start with. And again, in the GPS era, that would have been really impressive. It's not like it was like a dirt road out in the sticks someplace. It was damn Saratoga Springs.
Hey, it led me to some weird storage place, like private storage place. So I thought maybe this is where it is. Maybe that's part of its cover or like the ambiance. But nope, there was a locked gate there. So I'm like, I'm just at the wrong place. And then I look and I'm like, I put the wrong address. Nope, not admitting it until we record.
You can never know. It's funny. I originally thought I wasn't a big X-Files fan, but then I remember watching a ton of the episodes. I saw the first movie in the theater, bought all the comics published by Topps, and still have several. We just did a special mission for issue 17 that aired in May of 2026. And I still have both CDs. The music CD is appropriately weird. We all know tapes and CDs sometimes have quote, quote, hidden tracks on them, usually like 30 seconds or so after what you think the end of the recording is. The hidden tracks on the X-Files CD, songs in the key of X, music from and inspired by the X-Files, are actually before track one. You would never know they were there. When you hit play, you have to hit the backtrack button on your CD player. I also have The Truth and the Light, music from the X-Files by Mark Snow. It's all the spooky background music from the show with voiceovers from certain episodes. I listened to that one on the way to Saratoga. Max seems to recall me being the fan, too. I was also all into Millennium with Lance Hendrickson. There were a lot of call-outs to that show on the side also. But honestly, both are shows I haven't seen a single rerun of in decades.
People don't do reruns anymore, Rich. They just stream the stuff from something. Songs in the Key of X, that particular CD was easily my strongest connection to this day, to this show, to the X-Files in particular. I really liked that CD and played it easily a couple of hundred times from front and before the front to back in the day. That's easily more time than I ever spent watching the show by far, and more time than I spent reading any comics related to the show, because I only read one issue of the comic related to that show for this show. Despite how cool this place ended up being, far longer than I spent within the unassuming walls of the X-Files Preservation Collection. However, while the CD may have been my strongest connection to the show, not 1 second of all that time I spent listening to it made me want to give the actual X-Files series any more of a look than I already had. The same cannot be said for the time I spent at this semi-secret sanctuary in Saratoga, but more about that later. As for me remembering Rich to be a fan of the X-Files, I mean to say that in all my various groups of friends at the time, Rich was the only fan of the X-Files that I was aware of. I never once peeked at Millennium, except to note that Lance Hendrickson had been cast in something that I was definitely not going to watch. Now, as I mentioned to our host at the Preservation Collection for this visit, even though a sci-fi show about alien conspiracies and other weirdnesses should have been right up my raised on comic books and caffeine alley, I had my reasons for not making time to stay in and watch the X-Files more than a handful of times. Mostly, those reasons were in liquid form.
16 ounce or 22? Ah, college days. It's as inauspicious a building as any you'd expect to see housing this collection, which perhaps, though completely unintentional, is perhaps appropriate. It's just a long, nondescript aluminum building it shares with Bakery Suzanne and an old cemetery across the street. They got a figure in a hazmat suit holding a rifle at the door, and you walk into the gift shop. I later found our X-Files comic from our episode there.
Yeah, I also felt that the rather innocent and yes, unremarkable look of the establishment from the outside was appropriate. And looking back, I think we should have wandered into that bakery. Not just because I am fat and I like cake, but because I bet that's where all the truly weird stuff was going on. I mean, having the X-Files collection right next door kind of is the perfect distraction. And
yeah, I think they were closed like just as we arrived, so I don't think we could have like dipped over there even if we had thought of it.
Yeah, that's what they want us to think. So as for the gift shop, when you walk in, as Rich alluded to, when you first enter the building, there's a smaller area blocked off by curtains that passes as the gift shop for the Preservation Collection. It's more or less what feels like a random collection of the various commercially available bric-a-brac that's been branded with the show's IP over the decades. But there is quite a variety of that material on hand in that small space. You got various series of trading cards, as Rich mentioned, comics from the Topps and IDW runs. You got magazines, posters, and on and on. I, however, didn't notice any of the old collectible card game that I used to sell to stores back in my days at Adventures Distributing, which is another side story, but some of it may have very well been in there. There was a lot of stuff to check out just in the front room. Even if you're just looking for old merch related to the show, like they probably have it in there. It's like I said, you might have to look through it, but I bet you'll find it.
Yeah, t-shirts, all autographed stuff. There was a bunch of stuff there. So this was my second time there. I'd asked the first time if any of the stars from the show had shown up and was pretty much told, yeah, any number of them, except Duchovny and Anderson. They both want six figures to walk in the door, and she wants more than he does. It's simply unaffordable. Each ticket to the event for like the paying public would be like $900. It's just wow, just
Yeah, I mean, I know that people should ask for what they think their time is worth, but come on. The X-Files is the only reason that those two got to launch the careers they had later on. And with Duchovny, that's what? Californication, period? Granted, my wife and I watched all of that series together, but I can't remember David D's name being mentioned in too many other places since his days as a make-believe alien chaser. And sure, Anderson has had a bit more of a notable succession of roles since those days, but again, who would you have been without this silly little sci-fi show, hmm? I mean, the creator of the show, as Rich mentioned, came and cut the ribbon for free, for Pete's sake. And I believe that our host told us that Chris Carter has never charged for any of his subsequent visits to the collection either. Just some really crap form from the main stars of the show, in my opinion. Show some freaking gratitude and respect for not just where you got your start, but for the people that keep those royalties coming, and for the monumental dedication and effort put in by the people behind this stunningly impressive establishment. Jeez.
it's oh yeah, I mean like they wanted everything. I mean they want the airfare, they want the hotel, they want the room, they want you to pay for every single little bit of their time. I mean, come on. I mean, you want six figures? How about you both come for a 2-for-1 rate, like for the 35th anniversary in 2028 or something? Come on. I'm pretty sure Saratoga Springs can support your lifestyle, especially in summertime during the track season. We talked to the owner, Jim Thornton, a long time. Dude's all tatted up. He was on all the drugs back in the day. And he says X-Files pretty much saved his life. He loved Max's Crazy Eddie t-shirt. He was a real cool dude.
Yeah, he saw that as soon as I walked in. And it's just, if you go to localvintage.com, it's vintage with a Y. They just specialize in, hey, all these businesses are defunct. We can sell t-shirts of their logos and not get sued and cash in on nostalgia. And I have like 12 shirts from them. I'm wearing one right now for Storytown. Yeah, Lake George, New York, Storytown. Hey. All right, so Rich is right. Our host did, in fact, tell us after I said that I was too busy being a drunken idiot to watch much of the X-Files show, especially during the first 3 years when it aired on Friday nights, the most crucial years to get hooked on a show. Again, he said that, in fact, X-Files was instrumental in helping him get sober, while I was stupidly and quite busily heading in the other direction. Having been raised for 11 years or so in the general arm's reach of an alcoholic father, I applaud him for finding his way clean, and I thank all my stupid luck that I perhaps narrowly avoided traveling too far down the path to addiction myself. Now, I know that's kind of a heavy topic for a podcast about a silly sci-fi TV show, but again, these silly things are still works of art, and art can help people save their own lives and the lives of others. Now, as for Jim's tattoos that Rich mentioned, the man did have some pretty cool looking sleeves on display. Suns out, guns out, man. And most of the ink he's had done is horror TV movie related. At one point in our long, friendly, and fun conversation, I mentioned having only recently discovered the existence of Kolchak the Night Stalker. And immediately, Jim inched up his shirt to reveal a really awesome tattoo of Darren McGavin, yes, the dad from A Christmas Story, as said Night Stalker, brandishing a crucifix atop Jim's right shoulder. I hadn't seen the tattoo before I mentioned that. We're talking about horror in general and how I just discovered Kolchak. And he's like, oh, this guy? Boom! So Kolchak can be seen, and is seen by many, as a precursor or prototype for the kind of show that the X-Files became. The Night Stalker in question is a reporter, not a government agent, but he does track down or wind up entangled in stories about strange doings that sometimes turn out to have perfectly natural explanations, but also many others that do not. My exposure to Kolchak so far includes having watched the first excellent TV movie on YouTube. Just look it up. There's actually a ton of that stuff on YouTube. And having read the short but novel Kolchak the Ripper by indie author and online buddy of mine who I've mentioned on the show before, Chuck Miller, published by Moonstone Books. It's out of print right now, but go bug them and get that back in print. Get yourself a copy of it. It's a fun, like under 200-page book where Kolchak the Night Stalker comes up against Jack the Ripper in modern times. Yeah, and getting back to Crazy Eddie, for those of you who aren't familiar with the admittedly local legend of this mad retailer who offered prices that were, say it with me, insane. Suffice to say that Rich and I could do an entire episode, or at least a seriously healthy history minute, about that guy all by himself. However, we must needs wander back now to the actual topic at hand.
Yeah, that guy was one of those guys that, it's nostalgia now, but man, those commercials were irritating AF at the time.
And he was a criminal.
So the collection was originally going to be in downtown Saratoga. They had a spot picked out and everything. But the other tenants were all, oh, hell no. He's been treated pretty poorly all the way around by the locals. But whenever there's a Comic-Con or Sci-Fi Con or something similar in Saratoga, there's often shuttle buses taking the fans to the collection from the convention center. It's only about maybe 10 miles or so from point to point, so it's doable.
Yeah, I mean, Jim's tales of how he's been greeted by the Chamber of Commerce and so forth would not inspire one to spend 30 years amassing an incredibly varied collection of various and sundry artifacts upon which to base your very own fan mecca/tourist attraction. But hey, he's there, and so were we.
Yeah, the whole attitude is we're going to ignore you until it's time for you to pay your dues. You have to wonder how he got all this stuff. He mentions a little bit about it on the website. Show-worn clothes, props, scripts, storyboards, dioramas, background paintings, monster bodysuits, an alien cryptopod he stored in his basement. I mentioned eBay and he scoffed. I call it Evil Bay. Most of the stuff on there is reproduction or fake. Now, he's obviously not wrong, but I'd certainly check it every once in a while just in case. He has the stunningly dated, clunky as all hell laptop for our current standards that Chris Carter wrote the pilot episode on. They only have about half the stuff on display at any given time, and they rotate it. There's some unintentional comedy in some of the display cases. Demon Teeth, screen used. Nothing Lasts Forever, season 11, episode 9. Male half torso, screen used. It's a metal bowl with entrails hanging out of it. Peeled Face Man with severed finger. He has the original I Want to Believe poster with the UFO from Mulder's office on display. He's got a concept mold for a were-monster, which looks a little like a Jem'Hadar from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Blob Faceboy mask, complete with tongue hanging out. Concept floor plans for X-Files amusement park that Chris Carter apparently knew nothing about. Alien in a jar. The famous Leech monster mask. Some of this stuff is grisly, like the sheriff's smashed face prop, his skull's caved in. On display over a cute framed print of butterflies. Oh. He has the nose art from the B-29 Superforce's Drop Dead Red from Piper Maru that I had to pose next to. He's got a map of the U.S. that marks where all the episodes took place. Original Topps comic book art by Gordon Purcell from X-Files Annual 2, who penciled the issue that we just talked about. Walls are covered with posters, advertisements, photos of all other kinds of show-related stuff. We got a ton of international fans. People come from Japan to see this place. There's a DVD of the X-Files that flew the International Space Station in 2001, right before 9/11, because the fans of the 90s are the astronauts of today. Astronaut Susan Helms wrote on the picture of her and the disc floating on the station, "Chris, the truth really is out here." A photo of actor Anupam Kher posing with the autopsy table prop of his body is kind of funny too. The detail work is amazing. Each hair plug is individually installed.
Yeah, I mean, the fingernails on that thing were disturbingly realistic. Who was going to notice that on a CRT screen? It was perhaps the one piece in the exhibit that lingered with me the longest. I imagine that the actor in the photo was thinking, how did they know what my nipples looked like? And as Rich pointed out, the collection here, it is amazing to behold. I said at the top of the episode that I was never a fan of the show, but I am a fan of collections like this. I love seeing the minutiae about how something like a TV series actually gets made. And this collection has everything you need to get a grasp on the enormity and depth of such a task. Shooting schedules, budget lists, scripts, plot cards, storyboards, plenty of, as Rich mentioned, screen use, prosthetics, costumes, makeup effects, countless other artifacts fill the expansive room behind those gift shop curtains, arranged in what feels like a casual but seemingly chronologically winding arrangement to wander through and lose yourself in. One item that especially stood out to me was the X-Files pinball machine, as I have actually played one of the 1,500 copies ever made many years ago. Even though I am really bad at pinball, I love to play it, and I can attest that this particular table is a fun one to suck at. Sadly, the machine at the collection was not on display in operational condition, so I could not freshly demonstrate my enthusiastic lack of skill for Jim, and Rich has no need to be reminded of such. Since it wasn't super busy while we were there, Jim had time to visit with us as we checked out the collection, giving us even more details about the items on display and chatting with us about tons of other topics that such an environment tends to inspire. One such tangent involved the mention of the aforementioned in this episode and this podcast series, the Star Trek Original Series set tour, founded and captained by another Jim, James Cawley, up in Ticonderoga, New York, who the X-Files Jim was, of course, familiar and friendly with, just as you are all familiar with the epic episode of this very podcast detailing our more than 5 years delayed mission to visit as well, right? Speaking of the Trek tour, again, I should mention that the X-Files collection is not a recreation project like the Ticonderoga Enterprise set. I mean, the most they could probably meaningfully create is what? Mulder's office? And they probably could, given that they do have some of the furniture and, as Rich said, the infamous poster from the room where Duchovny plopped his soon-to-be six-figure per plop behind back in the day. But really, a warehouse filled with seemingly random tagged and cataloged artifacts seems more on brand for the X-Files, doesn't it? It's perhaps a bit too well lit to be featured in an episode of the show, but I wouldn't want to deal with all those lawsuits either. Like, I was thinking you could walk in and be handed flashlights and trench coats, and they can have the lights down and you have to go in like it's one of those, scenes in the show that I associate with the show. The stereotype is they always had flashlights out in darkened warehouses and whatnot. But again, people would be falling down, knocking their teeth out, and the place would be closed. Beyond all the tangents, though, Jim mentioned several aspects of various episodes from the X-Files during the tour, and as I hinted at earlier, every time he did so, I actually became pretty darn interested in checking out what he was talking about. Will I? Who knows? It's me, so probably not. But I can tell you that Jim's enthusiasm for and deep knowledge of the material is both captivating and inspiring.
They had a photograph on display of someone wearing a hospital gown, and the guy's ass is hanging out the back of it. I mean, you can definitely see the moonshot and everything. The caption was, "Chris, I hear that in your next contract negotiation, you're going to ask for the moon. I thought I'd go ahead and give it to you ahead of time." So that was one of the funnier things that we saw on the wall when we were there. But no one trusted the government 30 years ago. And with the advent of social media, everyone has a soapbox now to spew their own specific conspiracy theory du jour. It's much worse now, as I pretty much implied. So regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, could this show be a success now? Or does it strike too close to home?
Yeah, this show, I think, does stand as perhaps one of the last examples of a time when you could tell stories about what if all the conspiracy theories were real and have it seem like a bunch of harmless fun rather than more fuel for your extended family's reasons that you have each other blocked on all the social media sites. Right around when X-Files was doing this, everybody was doing this too. Comics, there were all kinds of comics like about what if all the stuff in the National Enquirer was real. You had the original Men in Black comic that way before the movie and stuff. Like that was all the rage at the time because again, it seemed like a bunch of fun, a good story engine rather than the thing that ruined Thanksgiving again, So to sum up my experience at the X-Files Preservation Collection in Saratoga, New York, I am someone, as I've said, who was only mildly familiar with the TV series, and I walked out of this place with a pretty deep and so far lasting impression. of not only all the effort that went into the show, but the depth of its impact on both popular and general nerd culture. This, I feel, is a can't miss stop if you're a fan, and really even if you're not. Places like this are rare, and I feel they're important. The preservation of the art that shapes and touches our lives is not often a task taken on by the creators or owners of the art itself. They move on to the next job. They've got work to do. It falls more often, and quite heavily so, on the shoulders of fans like Jim and his wife Kelly, who we did not have the pleasure of meeting this time around, who take decades to acquire, assemble, and care for entire histories, be they oral, material, digital, analog, or other, and to dedicate even more of their lives to maintaining and presenting these stories and inspirations that would otherwise be lost to history. This place really impressed the heck out of me, in case you haven't guessed. I kind of wonder what it would be like to go there when they're having one of their bigger events, a schedule for which you can, of course, keep up with on their website. The truth may or may not be out there, folks, but the X-Files Preservation Collection is, and you should go check it out. Upstate New York, my old stomping grounds and Rich's current stomping grounds, is really becoming like kind of a cool mecca for these, as I mentioned, I feel really important preservation projects, and recreation projects like the Ticonderoga stuff, where they have started on Batman 66 material. So talk about making sure I have to come back there, right? But as I said, even this X-Files thing that I had zero attachment to really was just something to behold. I do feel that keeping these kinds of things alive is important. I do feel that we shouldn't just rush on to the next streaming series or whatever that gets removed from a server and no one sees it ever again. I think if something is this big and has this much of an impact on popular culture and on people's lives, somebody that does all the work to maintain the history of it should be rewarded for their efforts. And Jim makes it a very cool time to go there. And like I said, I'm kind of tempted to see what one of the big events looks like at that place, because it was really me and Rich and I think one other guy wandered in at some point because it was, just a random weekend that we swung in. But I want to see that place when it's hopping. So who knows? Maybe
Indeed.
some of you guys will be there. This is a challenge to our buddies Paul and Mike in Australia, to Dave and Peter in Scotland. Come on, let us know. It'll be a short trip for Rich and me, really long trip for you guys.
If you're making the trip, might as well just do it 2-for-1. Like I said, go up to Ticonderoga. Just make a weekend.
Yeah, abso-freaking-lutely. So there you have it, folks. That was another outing of the Road Warriors on the Weird Warriors podcast. Who are the Weird Warriors? Who are the Road Warriors? Why, that's me and Rich. And this is the Weird Warriors podcast, as I mentioned. And this is a podcast on which Rich and I will find out if the truth
It's out there.